we showed that we had, on March 31st, now 504 billion of GAAP net worth. Now, what might surprise you is that there's no other company in the United States, no other company, that has a number that is that large. Now, that isn't because we've got the most valuable company in the United States. Other companies have used their money to repurchase shares. They could have accumulated 504 billion in GAAP. But basically, we have more under GAAP accounting now than any other company in the US. And of course, if you measure return on equity, that becomes a very big number to increase at a rapid rate, but we hope to do so. Not a rapid rate, a decent rate. And right below that, you see something called float. And float is money that is left in our hands, somewhat akin, but very importantly different than a bank deposit. But you have to pay interest to get a bank deposit. You have to pay more interest these days, and you have to run a bank and do a lot of things. And basically, this is money that represents unpaid losses at this time. You get paid in advance in insurance. So what shows up as a net liability on our balance sheet gives us funds to exercise with an amount of discretion that no other insurance company that I know of in the world enjoys, just because we have so much net worth. And our float now comes to 165 billion, and the man sitting on the far left is responsible for moving that number up from a pittance in 1986 to this incredible figure, which in most years, practically all years, hasn't cost us anything. So it's like having a bank with no employees, no interest, and no ability to withdraw the money in a hurry that we have working for us. And it's a very valuable asset that shows up as a liability. And Ajit is responsible for building up this treasure, which has been done by outcompeting insurance companies all over the world. And then now a number of our insurance companies in turn are run by talented managers who contributed one way or another. Start with Geico at the beginning of my career. And that float, if you think about it, just think of a balance sheet. You've got liabilities here, and you got assets over here. And the liability side finances the asset side. It's very simple. And stockholders' equity finances it, long-term debt finances it, and so on. But stockholders' equity is very expensive in a real sense. Long-term debt has been cheap for a while, but it can get expensive, and it can also become due eventually, and it may not be available. But float is another item that shows it's a liability, but hasn't cost us anything, and it can't disappear in a hurry, and it finances the asset side in the same way as stockholders' equity. And nobody else thinks of it much that way, but we've always thought of it that way, and it's built up over time. So I show at the bottom what's happened with cash and treasury bills through March 31st, and I will tell you that in the month of April, we probably added about $7 billion to that factor. Now, part of that is because we didn't buy as much stock, because that reduces cash and treasury bills. We bought about $400 million worth of stock in the month of April. That's a minus in terms of cash available. And we, however, sold net some stock, which produced maybe $4 billion. And of course, we had operating earnings, probably $2.5 billion or something in that area. And my guess is we probably increased our cash and treasury bills $6 or $7 billion in the month. And I just want to give you a feel for how the cash flows at Berkshire. And then if we move to the final, I think it's the final one, next to last one. No, I think it is the last one. Let's see, is the fourth? Yeah, is this? We should have the one up there, Class A equivalent shares outstanding. And you'll notice that every year the number of our shares go down. So if we own more businesses and the businesses make more money, your share as shareholders, as owners of Berkshire, increases every year without you laying out any money. Now you're laying out the alternative which you could receive in dividends, but the reason we've gotten to where we are is because we kept the money. We did pay a dividend in 1967, 10 cents a share. It was a terrible mistake. And I always tell people that I'd left for the men's room and the directors voted while I was gone, but that isn't true. I was there, I confess. But we reinvested, and that's produced the $500 billion plus of shareholders' equity and the $30 billion plus of operating earnings. And we'll continue to follow that policy because it makes a great deal of sense. And with that, I think we've taken care of the preliminaries. You can study the 10Q is on the web page, and if you have a week or two vacation, you could spend it reading the 10Q. But that is the essence of Berkshire. And with that, I will start with Becky Quick, and we will alternate between Becky and the audience. And her questions have come in from all over the country, and I believe you identified the sender. And go to it, Becky.
Thanks, Warren. The first question comes in from Randy Jeffs in Irvine, California, and his question is, if Silicon Valley Bank's deposit had not been fully covered, what do you think the economic consequences would have been to the nation?
Well, I would just simply say it would have been catastrophic. And that's why they were covered. And even though the FDIC limit is $250,000, that's the way the statute reads, but that is not the way the U.S. is going to behave any more than they're going to let the debt ceiling cause the world to go into turmoil. And I can't imagine anybody in the administration, in the Congress, in the Federal Reserve, whatever it may have been, FDIC, I can't imagine anybody saying, I'd like to be the one on television tomorrow and explain to the American public why we're keeping only $250,000 insured, and we're going to start a run on every bank in the country and disrupt the world financial system. So I think it was inevitable. Charlie, do you have any?
No, I have nothing to add.
Okay, well, incidentally, I should mention this now. Ajit and Greg will be here in the morning session, which ends at noon. And so if you've got questions to direct to them, the time to do it is in the first half of the show. And then after lunch, it'll just Charlie and I will be back. Okay. Area 1.
Hi, Nirav Patel, Haverhill, Massachusetts. Mr. Buffett, Mr. Munger, it seems like you found the sweet spot between being too conservative and too aggressive as investors. Do you ever make bad investment decisions because of your emotions, and what do you do to try to keep that from happening?
Well, we make bad investment decisions plenty of times. I make more than Charlie because I like to think it's because I make more decisions, but probably my batting average is worse. But I can't recall any time in the history of Berkshire that we made an emotional decision. That, I know the movie had Jamie Lee in there, but that was for laughs. I mean, Jamie Lee, she's good, but she's not good enough to get me or Charlie to make an emotional decision. Charlie, I'm sure you have something to add on that.
Well, it's a different movie than is shown at most corporate meetings.
Yeah. But have we ever made an emotional decision?
No.
Oh, yeah. That's in business we're talking about. Yeah. No, you don't want to be a no emotion person in all of your life, but you definitely want to be a no emotion person in making an investment or business decision. You can argue that we probably, I would say that we made an emotional decision perhaps, and when a manager has been with us for some period, and we've ignored the fact that perhaps they weren't quite what they were earlier. But our businesses are so good that they run better sometimes. I've talked about Wesco, for example, the wonderful Louisville incentive, and it ran on automatic pilot for a while, but I don't think we suffered by it. But you can argue that